that's really what most people want to avoid because they don't want to seem like a beginner. And that's what's holding everyone back. You listening right now, I'm talking to you. You are being held back because you're afraid of being a beginner.
So walk us through the steps, like so now that you're brand strategist at Celtic Serhant, how are you working with these agents? Are you working with them one-on-one? Are you working with them in a group setting? And walk us through the steps that you would take with an agent that wants to build their brand.
So I specifically work with a pro branding program. So Ryan has a program where agents get one-on-one support. So yes, I do work with agents one-on-one. And then he also hosts a monthly Q&A call where we all get on Zoom together and people ask Ryan questions. And then every week there's other support for anyone who's a pro member. So they get to watch a webinar teaching them about Instagram or a webinar about email marketing or things like that. So there's lots of really cool perks of being a pro member. And as a brand strategist, I am assigned real estate agents that I work with one-on-one, and we do things like define your mission and values, define your target audience, figure out what you're currently doing on social media, what's working, what's not working there. Are you leveraging emails? What kind of marketing are you using? Are you hosting events in your community? What does that look like? Do you have a podcast? How's that going? We just really think about your brand as a whole and all the ways that you're communicating your brand to the world. And what I find is typically agents aren't doing any of that. Right. They haven't thought of any of that. And so I help them to hone in on what their message is and then how to communicate that message and what platform makes the most sense for them.
Great.
You know, the one thing that you said a little earlier that resonated with me a lot is you put yourself out there in terms of who you want it to be without any judgment, and then you attracted and manifested the life that you wanted. So essentially, is it fair to say you're living a dream kind of lifestyle that you'd want?
100% I'm living a dream. Like in so many ways. I can't even, wouldn't even know where to start to tell you that I'm living the dream, but I always wanted to live by the water. I now live in San Diego, California. I always wanted to travel for work. My husband calls me out on this one. So I just got married less than 6 months ago.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And my husband says, I don't remember this, but he says it all the time, and he loves to tell people this, that when we first started dating, which is during the pandemic, so like probably 2020, he lived in California, I lived in Las Vegas, and he was kind of like hesitant about dating someone who doesn't live in the same state. And I was like, you know what? It's not even a big deal. I travel so much for work. Like I'm everywhere anyways. It won't even matter, you know? He's like, you did not travel for work back then. Like, what are you talking about? Right? I probably didn't start traveling for work till like the year after, but I literally don't ever remember like thinking about it as me lying. I just like knew that was going to be my life. That was the journey I was on. That was the path I was on. Everything that I was doing was setting myself up for being on stages around the country and supporting real estate agents on a bigger scale than I was before. And I just like knew that in my heart. I knew that in my soul. Like my body knew that. I guess I literally wasn't lying. That's just what it was. But he loves to tell people that.
Well, you're
that
manifesting
little story.
it.
Yeah, I was manifesting. I was putting it out there. Yeah,
yeah,
this is what I do. I travel for work. Like this, it's not even a big deal.
Same thing before you said, though. You weren't necessarily focusing solely on real estate agents and helping real estate professionals, but you manifested it and you started telling people,
yep.
No, I help real estate agents.
Well, it's almost like niching down. It's a risk that she took.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah.
It's interesting, though, because when you were thinking about you kind of living that lifestyle, and I'm thinking about real estate agents, I'm like, I hate the grind part of it, right? And something that you essentially, when John was going through your bio, it's like you provide somewhat of an alignment, but to get there, it's like you have to jump over a lake with a lot of alligators and fire, and it's very scary because you don't see instant results.
So many things. I don't even know where to start with this one. Okay.
Tear me apart.
So
start with the alligators and the fires.
The alligators and fire. Okay.
Legit.
So look, most agents are doing 20 things that don't fucking matter instead of the one thing that does. And so when we take away those 20 things that don't matter and we tell you the one thing that does, you feel more clarity, more freedom, and more ease than you ever did before. And this one thing is the thing that's actually helping you to connect with people. But sometimes it doesn't feel like the right thing. Like I'll give you another example. This is like a personal example. So on January 1st, my husband and I decided that we were going to get fit, right? We're like, we're going to be fit. We're going to be like, we're both about to be 40. He just turned 40. I'm about to be 40. And I was like, I'm going to be fit as fuck when I'm 40. I'm going to be the hottest 40-year-old you ever seen. And so we're in prep mode, right? So we're like, okay, we're going to, do this high protein diet and we're going to work out and do all these things. And one of the things that this like person, it's a TikTok thing. One of the things that the person on TikTok told me to do is drink water. Like, you have to drink water. And in my head, I'm like, drinking water? What the hell can drinking water do to like tone me up or build muscle, or right? Like, what does water have to do with it?
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm like, water doesn't seem right. So like, I was skipping the water part for a long time. And then when I was just like, you know what? He's the expert. I'm gonna listen to him. I started drinking water and I was like, what's happening here? There's some definition. Like, huh? Water? How is water the thing? Because you think it's about lifting heavier or running harder or whatever it is, but really it's like, fucking drink your water. Yeah. And so that's what I like to help real estate agents figure out, is that sometimes the things that you're thinking are the right things are literally not it. And it's something as simple as water, whatever that is in the real estate space, that you need to be doing that's going to actually bring you the results.
How do you overcome that hurdle with your clients?
I literally tell them, like,
I'm gonna kill you.
Hired me.
I feel like it's gonna be.
Yeah.
I feel like it's gonna be.
Yeah. Look, you hired me for a reason.
Yeah.
You invested all this money. Now, either you just basically might as well have burned that money, or you can listen to me, right? You hired me because you thought I was an expert, correct?
Correct.
Correct. So I've seen transformations from hundreds of real estate agents around the country, the world at this point. And so if you hired me, you're committed, correct?
Yep.
Then just do what I say for the next 90 days. And if after 90 days, you don't see a change in the amount of conversations you're having, in what people believe about you, in what people are saying, then you make your own decision. But for 90 days, can you just shut the fuck up and listen to me?
That's the hardest thing to tell independent contractors. It's as easy as, on the sales side, because we were trained with, hit the phones, and the grind part of it. And if you call enough people, you'll book eventually an appointment after so many calls.
You will, but that appointment is likely not going to get you a ton of other appointments.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's the difference, right?
What's your personal brand that will constantly pay dividends versus one that just, turn and burn?
Yes, exactly.
Walk us through what personal brand means to you.
So personal branding is what people say when they think about you. It's how you make people feel. It's being recognizable, being memorable. It's being a resource for your people, and they know what you're a resource for.
Yeah.
That's really what personal branding is. And I know some agents are listening right now and being like, how the fuck does that bring me business? But I promise you it does.
It's always interesting to me that like real estate agents, like you can make so much on each transaction. And we've talked about this so many different times with different people. I don't even think I realized until year 3 or 4 that I needed like a process, or that I needed, like that I was actually running a business. I was just so focused on hunting for the next deal, right? That, if I actually stopped to think about, maintaining a brand or creating a brand, or actually realizing like, hey, if I just focused a little bit more on my process or the customer journey, right? I'd build a little bit more of a brand and get some more referrals rather than having to go back and hunting,
Drawing board. Yeah, you're going back to the drawing board every time.
More people be calling me rather than me having to call.
But the one thing that you did say is triggering, like the emotional aspect. What do they feel when they see your name or hear your name? So whatever you're producing out there needs to trigger something emotional.
Absolutely.
Too. But then when you're thinking in a transactional base, you're not thinking about emotions. So that's like a big difficulty. When you said that to me, I was just like, how do I do that? Unless I become vulnerable on camera. And I know I can't be vulnerable on camera. And that's like a limiting belief, but it's a muscle.
That's and that's interesting. And I feel like, I imagine that since you've been podcasting for 1 year now, congratulations for that, by the way, you have probably become more vulnerable, because now you have to push record, and you probably share more than you did in the first episode, right? And so this is a practice in vulnerability. And vulnerability, Brene Brown talks about this all the time, is like the key to connecting with humans, and sales is about connecting with human beings. I always hesitate to use the word leads, even though my clients like to use the word leads. I don't even like to say I'm going to get you more leads, because that seems so transactional. That seems so turn and burn. That seems terrible. Like, I am going to help you build a network of people who know, like, and trust you. I'm going to help you build relationships that are going to go far beyond just the deal and actually serve you throughout your life. no matter if you're selling real estate or anything else. I always like to tell people that if I decided tomorrow that I was going to sell women's vitamins, people would fucking buy them from me.
Yeah.
Because they know, like, and trust me. It doesn't matter what I sell.
Yeah.
It's true.
One thing that comes very clear is when you're talking about know, like, and trust. I think of vision and integrity, because that's the two things you need for people to actually want to follow you on your journey. But then that also means that you need to document and share your journey. So for people building their personal brand, even though they're not there, are you telling them to preach about like the journey getting there? Is it like a key part of it?
Yes, show us behind the scenes. Absolutely. Show us behind the scenes. What are you doing right now to prep yourself for where you're going to be? And one thing that comes to mind right now is my first speaking gig, my first ever paid speaking gig. I think I got paid like $500, but whatever. My first speaking gig came because I was at a big event in Las Vegas. And it was, I want to say like in the Cosmo, somewhere really nice, a nice hotel. And there's, let's say, about 200 women in the room. And there was a stage with like comfy chairs and microphones and flowers. And it was beautiful. And it was the lunch break. And I told my bestie, I gave her my phone, and I was like, I'm going to go up there and take a picture with the microphone, like on the couch, you know, like go up on the stage and take a picture of me. Okay. So she went, I sat there with the little microphone on the stage. She took a picture of me. I posted it on Instagram in my Instagram stories, and within 2 weeks I booked my first paid speaking gig, and I've been speaking ever since.
Nice.
And why? Because I always knew I wanted to be a speaker. I knew what I was talking about, but I just couldn't get someone to like trust me or see me as a speaker. And it's not that I had this full thought formed before I did this photo, but I realized, oh, she saw me as a speaker, and then she wanted to hire me as a speaker. Right?
Yeah.
And especially for new agents, it's like, I always hear, well, I can't make a video if I don't even have a listing, or like, I'm not working with any buyers. So I'm like, not even in houses. Like, get your ass in a house.
Yeah.
Go to a broker's open, tag along with another agent, like do what you have to do so that you can get the content so that people can begin to see you as a realtor. And it doesn't matter if it's yours or not yours. It's like, how are you spending your day? Are you going to a real estate training? Document that. Let's see it. Let's see your commitment to your craft, because that is going to build trust with your audience. They're like, oh, she's always grinding. She's always learning. She's committed, right? And that's really what most people want to avoid, because they don't want to seem like a beginner.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's holding everyone back. You listening right now, I'm talking to you. You are being held back because you're afraid of being a beginner. And you're never going to get over that fear unless you just embrace being a beginner.
Yeah. Embrace the suck.
Yeah.
You have to know.
I like to say embrace the cringe. Like,
Exactly.
okay, sure, you're going to make people cringe. You're going to be weird, whatever. But people can laugh at me all they want. I will laugh all the way to the bank.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure if you go back down on your your Instagram page far enough, right?
Oh God.
You'll look at some
like
of those reels
yesterday,
and
probably. Yeah.
and you're like, oh man.
Yeah. I mean, I'm growing and learning every day, and there are definitely things that I wish I didn't post, or that I don't want my clients to scroll and be like, what happened here? I mean, but that's just part of the journey, and everyone has to go through it. No one gets to skip it. It's like your first car is not the Ferrari. Your first car is the Civic. We all know that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so let yourself start there. And it's specifically hard for those agents who are making good money, right? If they're making $500,000, $1 million a year, they're like, Candice, I'm not going to do social media because I'm cool, right? We're good. I'm like, yeah, but you're still leaving money on the table because you're not willing to put yourself out there and look a little bit like a beginner in this space just because you have success over here.
Yeah.
You know?
So how do you get people to rip the Band-Aid off and, go into that journey?
So here's kind of the beautiful thing about it. I don't really have to get people to rip the Band-Aid off. People are like, by the time they're coming to me, they're ready.
Yeah.
You know?
Because they're vulnerable enough to admit it.
They've been watching me long enough that they're like, I already know that Candice is going to say, everything I've said here before, I've said 100,000 times, right? So they already have heard that from me so many times in my social media, so many times on my podcast, here, wherever, on a stage. And they already understand that they're about to enter a phase that might feel challenging. But it is like anything else. It's like going to the gym for the first time. You feel like you're shitty, and you are. But you only get better by showing up again and again.